Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and today I want to talk about this rapidly evolving trade market that we're seeing in the NBA right now. Rumors have started to fly all over the place for star players, all-star players, really critical role players that could go to top-tier contenders, and it feels like pretty much every team wants to make a move. There are very few teams that don't feel like they've been mentioned in some rumor or another in just the early goings of this trade season, because the deadline isn't until February. Now December 15th passed, which is an important date because that is when most recently signed players from this summer can be traded. And we saw that with Dennis Schroeder being dealt to the Golden State Warriors. That happened after that date. We also saw Thomas Bryant being traded from the Miami Heat over to the Indiana Pacers. Those trades happened because we passed that. And now between here and the deadline, it really feels like anything could happen at any moment. And so I want to talk about my thoughts on some of the rumors, some of the things that I've seen out there, and give you my perspective on where teams might fall when trade season continues to heat up. Of course, I want to begin with the Jimmy Butler stuff. He is the biggest name that's been mentioned in prominent trade rumors and feels likely to be dealt. It makes sense for Miami to go ahead and deal him away. He's only got one season left on his contract. He's going to be free agent this summer. And with Miami being kind of middle of the pack, they're not terrible, but they're definitely not a contender. It doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion, to pay Jimmy Butler a bunch of money going into his age 37 and beyond seasons when you could really just try to retool this thing a little bit, maybe get something back for Jimmy Butler to put next to Tyler Hero, who's currently having a career season, and Bam Adebayo, who started the season really rough, but has been turning it around a bit as of late, although still not the breakout season I was hoping for. But yeah, I think it makes sense to trade Jimmy if you can get a real package back. And we have a bunch of teams listed as potential suitors, the four of them being Phoenix, Golden State, Dallas, and Houston. Two of those teams right off the bat in Dallas and Houston, I don't think make much sense at all. The Mavericks are playing unbelievable basketball right now, and to bring Jimmy Butler in, Dallas would kind of have to gut their roster, and they just went to the finals. They're still trying to get Klay Thompson acclimated. Kyrie and Luka have better chemistry than ever. I just don't see them breaking up that team to bring in a 36-year-old Jimmy Butler. And for the Rockets, kind of similar story. Like, they're a young team that is way exceeding expectations. Sure, you could try and bring him in and make a push right now for a title, but it still feels like even if Jimmy Butler comes in, they're a few pieces away. The offense is just nowhere near championship level right now. I would much rather, if I'm the Rockets organization, see my young team play in the playoffs, figure out the flaws, and then make moves from there this upcoming summer. I think that makes a lot more sense. So then we get to Phoenix and Golden State. Now, Phoenix, I do think he makes sense. Bradley Beal is somewhat redundant to that Suns team, although he's been good this season. He's been good his whole time he's been a Sun. I think Jimmy Butler would make a lot of sense. I've always said that while Jimmy is an amazing player, he's not built to be the one option on a championship team. That was just never going to happen. But you put him in Phoenix, suddenly he is your 3 option, and he could take over to be a 2 or 1 some nights, but you're not relying on that, and rather he is your high-level defender. He's that guy that has that elite playoff mentality, that experience that could go alongside Kevin Durant, who of course has won multiple finals, and Devin Booker, who's been to one. You build this formidable big 3 that I think fits together perfectly. You add a little bit more defense over there too with Jimmy, a high-level motor, a guy that wants to win, and I know he's getting up there in age, but the Suns really don't have anything to lose when they have a ton of money on their books already. They're basically capped out. They've put every asset possible into this core. Why not make one more all-in move if you can? Now, the one issue with this thing happening is I don't see any way that Phoenix gets this trade done, because to make the money work, any deal has to include Bradley Beal, and I just don't see Miami taking on that contract, and I don't see a third team going for it either, unless something insane happens and it's like a 4 or 5 team trade where assets are going to the squad that is getting the contract dumped on them. Because Beal, not only is he making $50 million for the next few seasons, which is way above his pay grade, he also has a no trade clause. And is he really going to waive a no trade clause playing alongside Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, where sure, they're not like a top tier contender, but when KD has been out there, they've looked really good for a majority of this season. Is he going to give that up to go over to Miami, where they're really not figuring anything out? And if you trade Jimmy Butler away from that team and it's just him, Tyler Hero, and Bam Adebayo, they're not getting anywhere close to a championship. So I don't think the Heat want to take on that money. I don't think he's going to waive the no trade clause to go over there, and then the Heat inherit that no trade clause, and then they are stuck with him because there's probably no way to trade his money further down the line. So while this is my favorite landing spot, I just don't see any way that it logistically makes sense for Miami to go ahead and make this move unless they're absolutely desperate and just feel like they need to get something back and this is the only offer on the table. Like, it just doesn't add up to me. And I know also Jimmy Butler's agent said that all the Suns stuff was BS, that it didn't actually happen, calling out Shams on Twitter. I don't buy that. I believe Shams a lot more than Jimmy's agent, who I think is playing damage control, because the the leaked information got out there. So yeah, I love the idea of Jimmy in Phoenix. I just don't think it happens because it's so tough to make that trade work. The other landing spot is Golden State, and I also think that makes sense, although I like it less than the trade with Phoenix, because sure, Jimmy gives you a second option for Steph, which you really need, but I don't even think with Jimmy that team is a legitimate championship threat. They just don't have a lot of real options outside of what would then be Steph as well as Jimmy Butler. In that deal, you probably give up Andrew Wiggins. You have to give up multiple other pieces to make the money work. And they did just add Dennis Schroeder too. Like, that team's good, but I think there are too many flaws with the way the Warriors are currently constructed to make it happen. I don't think they want to give up real young assets. Like, they weren't willing to give up Podziemski and Kuminga and guys like that for like a Lauri Markkanen, who's a much younger player who I think is a better fit than Jimmy with this team. I don't think they're going to do so for an aging Jimmy who they're going to have to try and re-sign. So honestly, I don't know if Jimmy gets dealt. I think it's a real possibility, and I think Golden State and Phoenix are the best destinations for him to land in for his success. That makes the most sense. The problem is making it make sense for Miami, because even though they want to get something back, like, are you really going to take on Bradley Beal's contract? I don't think Pat Riley's going to do that. Next, we've got a brand new rumor that came out just a couple of nights ago, and it happened during the NBA Cup championship game, which is why I feel like some people missed it, but the Nuggets are seriously interested in acquiring Zach LaVine from the Chicago Bulls, and that is very, very intriguing to me. It makes sense that LaVine's market is heating up a little bit because he's playing amazing basketball right now. He just had a 30-piece against the Celtics in a win for Chicago. The efficiency is up. It feels like he's playing better team basketball, and now that after last year, another year is knocked off his contract to the point where now it's only 2, potentially 3 seasons if he picks up the player option. I think it makes more sense. He's become more tradable, and I understand why Denver wants him. He's been an elite shot creator, highly efficient scorer, would give them amazing spacing and another real weapon next to Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, something that they've really needed, with Jamal Murray especially really struggling so far this season. The problem is, to make that deal work, you have to give up Michael Porter Jr., and I think Zach LaVine is probably a better player than MPJ, but I think MPJ is a better fit for the Nuggets, because by trading MPJ, just say they swapped him straight up for Zach LaVine, you lose a lot of size there. MPJ is a legit 6'9", 6'10" guy, while Zach LaVine is, probably gonna have to slot in, I guess, in your lineup as the 2 or maybe even the 3 if you want to start Jamal Murray, one of Christian Brown or Russell Westbrook, then LaVine. Like, he's got to be the small forward in that instance unless you bench both Russ and Christian Brown, but then who comes into the lineup in that small forward spot? Is it then Christian Brown, who's also undersized? Is it Peyton Watson, who really would kind of kill the spacing? Is it Julian Strother, who also really doesn't give you size? You lose a lot in that department by going ahead and making that shift, and when off the bench, you don't really have any legitimate high-level centers. That's a big-time concern for me. So I don't know if I love the fit for that potential deal. If I'm the Bulls, I'd be super interested. MPJ is a very versatile offensive weapon who is a lot younger than Zach LaVine. His contract is better. I like the idea of adding MPJ and seeing how he fits in our system if I'm Chicago, but for the Nuggets, I think it's just more of a lateral move that doesn't really improve anything that needs to be improved. I think they need to add defense, and that lineup of Jamal Murray, whoever you put at the 2, Zach LaVine, Jokic, Aaron Gordon, like, they're not stopping anybody. So LaVine, while he would be fun in Denver, I just don't think it makes that much sense. Another name that's been mentioned with Chicago is Nikola Vucevic. Also makes a lot of sense. He's having kind of a career year right now, and there are a lot of destinations I like for him potentially. I know the Lakers have been mentioned. I think that would be interesting. Golden State, he'd make a lot of sense over there, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be too hard to pick him up, just maybe like a first-round pick. So I do expect Nikola Vucevic to get moved, and honestly, probably Zach LaVine as well. I think the Bulls have a full fire sale, but I just really don't love the idea of that LaVine Denver thing. Maybe if you're the Nuggets and you pick up another piece, like say you also get like Patrick Williams or something like that, but then the money's going to be really hard to make work. Maybe like an Ayo Dosunmu, but I don't see any way Chicago deals him. It's just really hard for me to envision that making sense for Denver, when in reality, I think they need more depth pieces rather than going for that star, somebody that is just a worse fit than the guy you would have to trade him for. Also in the news are the Pelicans, who seem ready to move basically everybody after they've started the season 5-23. It has been a nightmare year in every single facet, so I don't blame them for just trying to go ahead and reset this thing. And it sounds like the only guys off the table are Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Yves Missi. Outside of those 3 young guys, you could acquire pretty much anybody. CJ McCollum, I don't know how much of a market there's going to be for him because of his contract and the fact that he's getting up there in age, but he is an intriguing player if a team can make the money work and it makes sense. Brandon Ingram has been mentioned in a billion trade rumors. There are a number of destinations that I like for him. I like Memphis as a potential landing spot for Brandon Ingram. I would like Golden State as well. I know there have been rumblings about the Lakers with him. I think a reunion would be pretty fun. Ingram feels like one of the more prime star level players to be traded this season. I mean, the Pelicans have to move off of him with the way that this season has gone and that you've really come cratering down over the past few seasons, if you include last year, where they're up towards the top of the standings and then injuries once again popped up and they lost in the first round. I think you have to move off of Ingram. You can't really commit that money to him right now. You need to reevaluate this offseason. And if you get Cooper Flag, you could just rebuild from scratch. So I think he probably gets dealt, but Zion is maybe the most interesting name out of that group. And there have been like no reports about specific landing spots for Zion. My favorite idea is like a young team just trying to go ahead and take a swing where you can give up a pick or two and say, we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work out, cool. You took a chance on a guy who was once considered a generational talent, looked at as like the next game-breaking face of the NBA. Like, you give up one first-round pick, who cares? Like the Hornets, that's a team I would love to see go after a Zion. If you could get somehow him healthy and he's playing alongside Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, even if you have to give up like a couple of first-round picks, I think it's worth it. Similar case for me for like Chicago or the Pistons or the San Antonio Spurs. Imagine the Spurs give up a couple of their first-round picks that they've received in a number of trades, and they bring in Zion and he gets healthy and it's him and Wemby out there. That would be incredible. Like the Rockets could maybe take a chance. I don't know. I know the Lakers are like the top betting odds favorite to land him, which that's always crazy to me that there's odds on the place that players land in trades when we know nothing. And we don't even know if he's actually like truly on the market, but that would be kind of crazy to imagine Zion Williamson playing alongside LeBron James and AD. The spacing is going to be disastrous. I don't think it really makes sense, but it definitely would be showtime. So yeah, the fact that he's even an option to be out there is crazy. Imagine like telling somebody that back in his 2019 draft class that just 5 years later, we'd be talking about Zion Williamson and how his career has been a massive disappointment. And it feels like a real possibility he could get moved at some point soon. That would have been unheard of. Another team with basically everybody on the market are the Brooklyn Nets. We saw them trade Dennis Schroeder. I like that pickup for the Warriors, even though they got slaughtered in his first game, and it made sense for the Nets to deal him because they were just winning too many games. I think we see more moves coming here soon. Dorian Finney-Smith is a name that I do expect to get moved, and basically any team that is a contender that can make that money work, I like the fit for. There's not a lot of teams that I think you'd be bad on. Same thing for Cam Johnson. And as a Thunder fan, I would love to see Cam Johnson come into the Thunder this trade deadline. He brings a lot of spacing. The Thunder shooting has been pretty flaky so far this season. I think they need to add another high volume sniper guy. That's exactly what Cam Johnson would bring to the table. I would fit in perfectly, gives them a little bit more size. I love the idea of Cam on this team. And OKC doesn't really have to do too much to make the money work. It's pretty simple. And they've got, of course, $1 billion first-round picks to throw at the Nets as well to outbid other contenders that are trying to pursue him. And similar case with Dorian Finney-Smith. I think anywhere that Cam Johnson lands would make a lot of sense. The Lakers, I know I keep mentioning them. He'd be perfect for that team and pretty much anybody else. And then there are a lot of other guys who we've heard rumors about, like Clint Capella is reportedly available for trade. Some teams that have been reported to be interested in bigs include the Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Lakers, and the Pelicans, if quote unquote they're in any position to buy by the deadline, which I can tell you right now they're not going to be. Alonzo Ball feels like he could be moved, and if he can stay on the court and really be out there consistently, I think he could make a big impact, although that's probably a big what if for him right now. I mentioned Jonas Valanciunas earlier, fully expect him to get moved. I'd be shocked if he's on the Wizards by the deadline. Same thing with Kyle Kuzma, who's been really bad so far this season, but I think there are a number of teams that are willing to buy low on him, although maybe the fact that his value is probably down right now makes the Wizards hold on to him because it's not like he's really winning them games. They're 4-21 right now. The Jazz have a lot of rumors circulating around them, like Walker Kessler has been reportedly in the market. They might move John Collins, like a Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton. They're willing to have a fire sale with basically anybody, it feels like, if a team comes along with the right package. I mean, they're 6-20 right now. They're trying to tank for Cooper Flag. I completely get it. And then really just every team feels like they could potentially make a deal. If I go through the conference, like my favorite team, the Thunder, I think we can make an addition. Grizzlies are pretty deep. I feel less certain that they'll make a move or try to, but when you're at the top of the conference or towards the top, you probably try to make some type of move. The Rockets, I could see adding a little bit of veteran talent. Maybe the Mavericks. I think the Clippers, Nuggets, Lakers, Wolves, Suns, Warriors all really want to add pieces. Spurs could definitely see it. Kings really want to add guys. And then those bottom three teams in the Blazers, Jazz, and Pelicans will be looking to move off of a lot of guys. Maybe we see like a Robert Williams or an Anthony Simons or a DeAndre Ayton, one of those guys moved if you're Portland. The Cavaliers, I think, are going to try to buy since they're top of the Eastern Conference. Celtics, I feel pretty good that they won't do anything. I mean, it's the Celtics. They'll add like a random role player who will just randomly turn into an unbelievable force in the playoffs. That's kind of what they do. The Knicks, I think, will try to add a little bit of depth over there. The Magic, maybe they buy because they've looked really good when either Paolo or Franz have been out there. When they're both out there, they're going to be amazing. I expect the Bucks to make moves. Heat could turn to sellers. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The Hawks are kind of middle of the pack. I fully expect the Pacers to do something. They've been terrible. Bulls are going to sell off pieces. Same thing with the Brooklyn Nets. Pistons, I think, are going to try to go for guys. Sixers, I feel like have to do something because it's been such a disastrous season. And I do still feel like when they get everybody out there, they could be really interesting. So maybe they go ahead and bank on that. And they're not that far out of the Eastern Conference playoff race either. The Hornets, I think, could both buy or sell certain guys. Raptors, similar case. And then the Wizards are just going to be trading everybody away. So it feels like every team has some type of role to play in this trade market. And that's kind of how I expect it to be with the new CBA. Maybe we see less like big time superstar trades, at least during the season. I still think in the summer it's somewhat likely, but I think there's a world where we see more like 3-4 team trades to make the money work in a lot of these situations. We see a lot more role players being swapped, and I'm excited about that. Even though we're not going to see like the big Kevin Durant trade deadline blockbuster of a couple of years ago or the Kyrie trade or anything like that, I think we get some big time moves. There are guys that are really going to swing this title race, and everybody's going to be interested. So I'm really excited to see the way that this trade market goes ahead and comes alive over the course of the next couple of months. It's in action now. We've seen a couple of small deals, and I think a really big one is right around the corner. I expect a massive trade to happen by the time we talk a month from now on January 20th. Mark my words. And yeah, those are my thoughts on the current NBA trade market. Let me know down below in the comments. Who do you think is getting moved? Who's the next guy to be traded? Who's the biggest name to get dealt at this deadline? Where are they going? What does the package look like? What do you want your favorite team to go ahead and do at this trade deadline going into the upcoming trade market? What are you looking for? What are you excited about? Are there any big names you think that could suddenly be on the market that we don't know about yet? I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one say back.